Okay, back again. Con agua.
Okay, yeah, we think we have still 2 minutes, so let's just wait. But I started now the live stream on YouTube.
As well, okay, good, very good.
Okay.
Yeah. I mentioned to Peter, if there's interest in Brazil, if there is, on a technical basis, the Imperial College doctorate.
Now the
Dr. Enrique
on YouTube. Sorry, I had a feedback from my own webpage. I had to switch.
You were mentioning Dr. Enrique. I still haven't figured out what he does.
I don't know. He's the guy who does the numbers for Dr. Neil Ferguson, I guess, for Brazil. So if there's any interest from a highly technical point of view in Brazil, if this presentation has any legs, he will be willing to speak to ask very difficult questions on modeling. His presentation is at the end, Peter. Did you see the presentation, Peter, at the end of
I did.
The heavy math stuff? Yes,
it looks technical.
Those guys know what they're doing, yeah. It's impressive. I see my friend Victor Braga on the line from Rio de Janeiro. He's also modeling.
Where does he work, or what's his background for doing that?
Sul America. Sul America. I see Alexandre Maeda from Zurich, former actuary.
You invited all your friends.
I have friends, yes. I see Flick from Society of Actuaries he's on the SWA board. I see
In the US?
Yes, he's in the SWA board.
Okay, I think we have now 6 o'clock in Central Europe, so we should start. So it's a pleasure to have Ronald here today, and it's also a pleasure to have a talk on. I mean, it's very good to have now a talk on Brazil, because we all think that's now one of the hotspots of the COVID-19 pandemic at the moment. So I should just more or less directly or handing over to Ronald. Maybe you can start just by saying a few words about yourself so that we know your background. And then just start the screen sharing, and we are listening to your talk.
Okay, can I share the screen first and then introduce myself?
I think it's better just introduce yourself, but it doesn't matter.
Okay, so anyway, here we are. My screen.
Sí, Timothy, estamos en contacto ahora mismo con la plataforma.
Right, okay, here we are. Very good. This is my brief resume here. As I said, I'm an actuary. I studied at City University in London. I'm a fellow at the Institute and also the Society of Actuaries. So I'm an actuary. And I've been an actuary for quite a long time, since 1986, when I got my associateship of the Society of Actuaries, working in London. I've worked and paid taxes in all of these countries I put out there. I'm from Trinidad, hence my accent. And it's been in Brazil since 1997. And I started RJ, which is Reinsurance Group of America, since 2012 here in Brazil. But I've worked for Dicola, where I met Peter Frederick, who introduced me to this. I worked for, that became Janeiro. I've worked for Unequities as well. So I didn't put it there. I've lived in Germany maybe for 5 months of my life, both in Köln and München. So anyway, that's like 5 months. But anyway, on the Society of Actuaries peer review committee report, COVID-19 as well, That doesn't make me an expert, but it does mean that I've read tremendously. I do read tremendously about COVID-19, all the references that goes into their mega report, which I strongly, highly recommend. It's a good read. And I like to blog. Medium.com is like for the YouTube of writers. And my pen name is Actuary Out of the Box. And I have a couple of articles there on coronavirus, my points of view. So that's me. Right. So anyway, here we are. Let's brief introduction here. What is this talk going to be about? I'm a user of modeling data, right? So I'm not a data scientist that produces models. I'm sure many of the audience here can produce models. I am an end user. So I have a local perspective, of course. Okay? And my intention is to show some information that you may have never seen. So let's see, right? And of course, I have lots of references to Sao Paulo, is where I live. And Sao Paulo is the financial center of Latin America. And then, as we say, if Sao Paulo goes, game over for Latin American finances, I guess. So Sao Paulo is fairly important in the whole scheme of Latin America. I'm not going to I'm not going to use heavy mathematics, which may disappoint some people. But as a treat, at the very end of my presentation, it's annexed 19 pages from the Imperial College of London that a presentation was released 2 or 3 days before, that none other than Neil Ferguson has signed off on it. And that presentation goes heavy math about Brazil. It's not on Imperial site as yet, but I have explicit permission from the team to share it with everybody here. Okay. And basically, I'm not going to talk about the Brazilian economy in my presentation. It's too big a topic. And I'm not going to talk politics as well. Even though I'll just make one side comment that Brazil is probably as confused from a political point of view as United States. I'm not sure who's worse, right? But very parallel, okay? And the picture I have here is the girl there. She's against the governor of Sao Paulo. His name is Doria, and she's protesting that he's taking too long to open the state. That's a little reference there, but not going to talk politics. I'm also not going to talk about the impact of the insurance industry. It's so difficult to model the impact on the population, and then the insured population. That's even a bigger topic. Needs a whole seminar, of course. So not going to talk medicine. No medical advances or who's using what procedures in Brazil. But happy to receive emails, of course, and I'll get back to as many as possible on these topics that I'm excluding from this short presentation. Okay. Very quick overview of Brazil, of course, here. This just I took part in the Mexican presentation last week, and there were some questions about population. So just so I put some things there. Every country is different, of course. Brazil is very young, so that's good, 31. Okay. It has a low life expectancy because healthcare is an issue here, so that's not good. And I've just put on the right-hand side that all the right comorbidities are here for coronavirus to thrive in, unfortunately. So all the usual suspects are in Brazil. Okay. And this side is just really showing over the glaring inequalities on the left-hand side. In pink, of course, light pink means that the average wealth is quite low from a worldwide point of view. And of course, on the right-hand side, it's not good that it shows how unequal Brazil is in population distribution. At the very top, 1%, only that owns over, let's say, $3,000 a month, so very, very low numbers, okay? And so you have a dangerous blend here between education. This is an education graph. Brazil, of course, is on average around, let's say, 7-8 years of education. And, some, not very rich country. So unfortunately, those are very two indications that's going to expose a very fragile society. Okay, my presentation, I really want to talk about some of my go-to websites that I look at. I mean, I've looked at hundreds, maybe thousands of websites, okay? And basically, when when the issue is Brazil, there are very few sites, international sites that are modeling Brazil. And of course, fake news is a big thing. So hopefully, I'm not even going to include any, in my opinion, I'm not sure these sites are perfect, but I think they have good intentions, shall I say, right? That's the best thing I can use. Good intention sites. So of course, the famous IHME, they're there, they're modeling Brazil, even by individual states. So that's, you know, I believe that's one of the main sites that the White House uses. And Dr. Fauci references as well. And then there's a YYG sites as well. They have the site from there's an MIT alumnus there. He's actually showing R, and he has a long page, a long section about why he doesn't like the IHME projection. So that's his point of view. Now, a very interesting site that I'm including here is AIR at Worldwide, which is from Verisk. They actually attempt to show how data is so sorely underreported, right? Which is a big issue, of course. So they assume everything is underreported, and they're actually making an estimate for the true figures, and they do Brazil as well. Okay? So that's interesting. And then finally, we have Imperial here, which has two distinct teams. Because I asked, how come some of your projections, some of your models have projections, and some models don't have projections, just are. This is the second link I'm showing there. And then apparently there are different data scientists and the difference of opinion regarding signing off on projections. Anyway, Brazil is there. And here's the best things of local sites, I think, in my opinion, is the first site from the government, the Ministry of Health in Brazil. But it does not set out any projections or estimates of R, so no, not going to see projections there, just raw data. And the Catholic University in Brazil, they have, in my opinion, quite a decent, and I'm going to show a graph of them afterwards. They look fairly credible. It's looking good, at least the numbers, right? The process, not sure, but they certainly, the numbers look very good. And finally, there's an investment bank in Brazil called BTG, and the leading investment bank in LATAM. And they send out daily updates on COVID-19, which I use a lot. And they're really good with hospital occupancy that I'm going to show you during this presentation. So if anybody wants that information, they can contact me directly to be on my mailing list for hospital occupancy in Brazil. Okay, first slide here. This slide, I'm not sure how many of you are aware of, it's called the Human Mortality Database. And it started in 2000. And this site is they try to have the best standards of mortality in the world. Brazil is not there, okay? And they basically don't believe that the Brazilian data, and I've contacted them, is that credible. And the site was in 2000. So when you criticize Brazil that it doesn't have good data, it's not a big surprise, you know, that there are very few countries in the world who are considered have very, very good data. And like bringing insurance here, of course, mortality is very important. A new product for us is, of course, longevity. And a life reinsurer, to start doing deals on longevity swap, longevity everything, we have to trust the mortality tables because, of course, the second derivative, longevity. So, you know, if you're not on this list, it's quite likely a life reinsurer will struggle to construct a longevity table. So, now, what things are not in Brazil? And it's no matter beating your head on a wall, not going to happen. The number of tests undertaken. There's no idea in Brazil. The Ministry of Health doesn't publish numbers. No one has any idea, right? And I know there are some sites like World Meters, they estimate it, but they are guessing, right? So I won't even go there, right? The rate of reproduction in Brazil as well, the R, I'm going to show some slides there. R there. That's all over the place, in my opinion. And I'm going to show you some top slides, some top data scientists, and it's all over the world place. I envy, of course, Germany, that they have a great report, you know, that's updated daily. And once again, the local teams, of course, that are calculating the R, they may not have the expertise as some of the global players that are looking at these calculations all over the world. Okay, and Brazil is a continent, so R varies, you know, by region. Okay, and of course, the CFR, the case fatality rate, that's another one that's a little challenging sometimes. For some reason, nobody ever lags it, but I'm going to show a lag further on. And I've never seen a case fatality rate by age bands, never in Brazil. And then excess deaths in Brazil, that's an issue as well. You know, exactly. We know it's higher, but how much higher? I'm going to show that later as well. So those are some major challenges we have. So what's happening in Brazil other than having cool statutes? Okay. First slide from the SOA. The SOA does this great report I referred to, and they were very nice in my opinion. And they were able to did this slide just for me, but for us. It's updated June 21st. So anyway, showing Brazil as number 2. I've left Germany there just as a reference. I know lots of Germans are stating on this call, so not good. This is a very interesting slide. And there are a few slides I will say, please don't, you know, some of the highlights. This is the first one of the highlights. And this shows, which I've never seen anywhere before in my reading, on the x-axis is showing the confirmed cases per million. So Brazil is there. But of course, you see the US and Peru and Chile, you know, they have their issues as well. And then of course, the y-axis has the deaths per million, you know. So of course, you know, Belgium unfortunately is leading the charge there. So relative, everything is relative, you know. So Brazil has big numbers, of course. But if you looked at this map, you know, I mean, I think CNN, of course, has put Brazil's on the map, but this map shows that it's not good, but I mean, it's not the worst of the worst either, as yet, anyway. So thanks, SOA, for this slide. This I got from the BBC, showing 2007 deaths. Of course, people die from cardiovascular, Latin Portuguese cancer, of course. And if you were compared to 2017, where coronavirus would be in Brazil, so of course it's significant, but you know, it certainly is worrying, of course. And I thought it's really interesting to show the relative impact of deaths, of course, right now. Okay, another great slide here. I think it's showing. This shows the cases by inhabitants in the Brazilian cities. So you see, you have a place called Rondônia, which is at the very top. Rondônia is a small city. Sorry, Porto Velho. Porto Velho is a very small city in a state called Rondônia, right? And at the best, way at the bottom there, is a little city called Campo Grande, and that's in Mato Grosso do Sul. Okay, so that's the best. So here we're seeing Rondônia, this little town in Rondônia, which is, I guess, is like a big retirement. Has the cases of a retirement home in Brazil, sadly. And then you have Mato Grosso do Sul, who is like the New Zealand of Brazil. So it's all over the place. Okay. Oh, that's just a side comment. Brazil doesn't have the retirement homes that America has or Europe has. So from that clustering point of view, kind of safe. That's excluded. We don't have that. We have other issues. So when you see this, you realize, listen, if you're projecting Brazil, you have to project by states. You have to project, you know, by rural and inner cities for each of the states, the 26 states. It's a big job. Okay. I did a slide with my actuaries. This is the case fatality rate, of course. It's over 1,000 deaths. I started counting, right? Days after the first 1,000. And we're looking here, the light blue line, of course. Then I have some non-actuaries on the line. This is looking at the people dying from the disease and who's getting it. And it looks as if we're around 5%, right? Like the light blue line at the bottom. But that's not quite right because, of course, people dying divided by the number of cases. The number of cases are never in sync with the deaths because of underreporting. So what's quite common to do is the denominator. You look at the denominator 7 days before the deaths, or the denominator 14 days before the deaths. So anyway, so it's looking like is moving to around 6.5%, 7% really. So of course, green is like the worst of the worst, not happening. And this is quite consistent with other countries you're seeing. So I thought this is a good reference. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about some R's here, right? I'm not so happy with R's to be honest, right? And so, as I said, we don't have a Robert Koch equivalent that Germany has. So this is the first attempt at R from the Imperial College of London. And this is like June 12th, I believe, is their number here. And they have a Brazil there, and they're projecting deaths just for a week, right? And they're showing R there of 1.06 with a confidence interval there. Okay. And anyway, another team of Imperial College says, nope, we're not going to project. And we believe they're doing R by the biggest states. And as you see, Sao Paulo, they're saying 1.47. They have just done another study, which I have to the annex. I'm not including it in my main presentation because Imperial College hasn't published their new study publicly. I'm not sure why. But anyway, it's there. And I checked that the R for Sao Paulo is about the same. So anyway, difference, even from two teams from the same university. And then this, of course, is YYG. It's a very famous site. And he's doing Brazil. And he decided on April the 3rd that R certainly is going to make a dive. So anyway. And then you have the Catholic University in Brazil, called PUC in Portuguese, okay? They have on the left-hand side, they're showing the R, which looks a little, not sure, very artistic, R going down like that. And but their numbers look reasonable, huh? If you think Brazil has like around 52,000 deaths right now, let's say, approximately, and they're projecting numbers from the 5th of July, which is not a very long time to project, but still, I think it's reasonable. Their numbers look reasonable, in my opinion. And by the way, I've put the references to everything on each slide. So feel free to, Dr. Marcus is gonna put my presentation on your site, and feel free to click and dive into all of these numbers. But for me, this looks like one of the best well-intentioned technical sites I've seen in Brazil, to be honest. Okay, projections. Normally for this slide, I have like a gypsy lady looking at a crystal ball, but I think this image is more appropriate. Projections. Now, I got this from my friend, Dr. Enrique from Imperial College, the Brazilian PhD, who's on Dr. Neil Ferguson's team. And I asked him, you know, what's your issues? And these were his main issues here. Okay, so from him, he gave me these slides. So I asked him to, he unfortunately couldn't join me today, but he sent the slide. And basically, if you remember the slide I showed you with Rodonia going to Mato Grosso do Sul, it's really heterogeneity. And I think that's a driving issue here. So anyway, here's some specific Brazilian sites, IHME. They're projecting Brazil there. Okay. They have a fairly short projection rate. They're only projecting like mid-August, around that. Okay. And then you have the YYG, who they are more brave. They're going much longer in their projections. Okay. And they have a different methodology. At the top there, they're using SEIS mechanistic model, but they're looking at Brazil. And they even have R and everything on their sites. And then with this slide, I think I'm putting this slide in because I think it's important to open your mind and think of different modeling, of course. And I think Veresk they're saying in listen, we know we're underestimating stuff, right? So let's make an assumption and let's look at data. So I think of all the sites I've seen, this certainly is something to use as a benchmark. If really we're underestimating, which we are, of course, what the numbers look like. Okay, so they project only up to they go as far as 4 weeks. Yes, they go as far as 4 weeks, their site. Okay. So anyway, in summary, because lots of numbers there, just showing you basically where we are right now in Brazil at 51,000, I said deaths. And as you see, if you look at each site here, from the lower range of 63,000 up to 150, to 600,000 deaths. You know, depends on the reporting or not. So, you know, you look at it, but you know, am I really convinced? No, because they're all over the place, the numbers. Okay, as I said, the Brazilian modeling done by Rio de Janeiro seems to be the most stable one, but they're not going very long in their projections. Sorry. Excess death. I said this was a challenge, and it is. And the best site I've seen is from the New York Times, believe it or not. And they're claiming that there's an excess death really of 33%. If you do the numbers, it's 33% basically. That the excess deaths here we're seeing here is 17,000, but of course in over 2 months, April, May this year, 18,000, let's say. But of course the COVID-19 deaths, that's according to the New York Times, is let's say just under 14. It's just under 14,000. Okay, so there's a difference of 4,200 missing there. And this is a good example of the data in Brazil. If you look at the main Brazilian site, which I've not included here because I'm not sure about it. If you look at January to June, let's say this year against January to June last year, the excess deaths on the site in Brazil says it's only 3% higher, right? Which of course is not realistic, right? We have a much more excess deaths, right? So who's right? 3% is obviously too low. The New York Times is 33%, looking at 6 cities, not sure either. So even something like excess deaths, which is done very nicely, I know England does it, they try to do it in factories, is an issue. We don't know where the number is, sadly, okay? But interesting, in the official site in Brazil, which I can send to you guys afterwards if you want, it shows something very interesting. It shows that SARS in Brazil, for a period last year, they took a couple of months, 3 months or something. And they said that in that period, 3-month period, there were 600 deaths in Brazil from SARS, right? 600. But the same period this year, there are 5,000 deaths, right, for SARS, which seems to indicate people are putting coronavirus deaths in SARS. Otherwise, if there were 5,000 people dying in 3 months in Brazil of SARS, there would be another epidemic, of course. So the official site points you to that some conclusions, or makes you a little wary, shall I say, of the official data. So that's a point there. But I didn't put it on this presentation because not so sure with the data. So any good news? Okay, this is going to be my shortest section because it's good news, difficult to see, good news. This is our R in Brazil. This is our 7-day moving average for cases, of course, right? So it looks as if over the whole country, it looks as if we're hitting a plateau here, which is good, okay? I took this from the World Meter site, okay? So that's one good news. And I said, if you can't calculate R and you can't model well, this is like the best thing we have in my opinion. Okay. Brazil is all over the place, as I showed you in my earlier slide. But if you look at the main states and you look at, this is of course a logarithmic scale by major state, you can see it's looking as if it's all, the worst is past us. At least they're all converging to, some sort of normal, less chaotic situation. That's good. And this is I got from my banking friends. This talks of hospitalizations in the municipal hospitals. And to give you a number, 75% of Brazilians have to rely on public health, which is a little precarious, to be honest. But right now, if you look at the numbers, again, it's only like 60% occupied, the public hospitals. So that's not so bad, I guess. That's pretty good. If you look at the yellow line there, right? This is even a better number here. On the right-hand side is a football field in Sao Paulo. And they build these huge hospital camps, like military camps almost. And right now, in this big one, it's 14% occupancy, okay? So, and, it might be, yes, it's supposed, there are rumors anyway, this is a rumor. It's going to be closed this month because like no one's going there. So that's a very good sign as well, okay? So, there are a couple of camp hospitals in Sao Paulo. In Rio, there's only one hospital such like that, and it's only partially built still. Sao Paulo is a different level of medical care, to be honest. So that's a good sign. The stock market has rebounded, but the word in English that we use a lot is this a dead cat bounce, which is showed at the top there. When the market is so low, it can only go up. So not sure, but it is what it is. The market is up. Okay, the Bovespa, the main stock market in Brazil. Okay, so reopening. Remember, I said I would try to show you slides you have never seen, maybe. I'm sure not many people have seen Bolsonaro with a mask on. So anyway, but there are lots of slides. There are lots of pictures of him with a mask on. Yeah, really. And this is with his cabinet, maybe taken 2 months ago. So. Okay, this is Sao Paulo. As I said, I would talk about Sao Paulo. There is a plan in Sao Paulo to open it. There are different phases and different colors at the top there. You see from high red to going to blue. And given we don't have R and we don't have projections, the government is looking at these indicators here, using first of all, looking at the health system capacity to calculate some numbers, and then looking at the evolution of the epidemic. So they're looking at number of cases, of course, how's that looking? Number of deaths, how that's looking, and the health system capacity, which is the two numbers above there, looking at the bed occupancy rate, and each state, do they have enough beds they're building more capacity, of course, as you see. So once there's capacity and there's occupancy is low, then you move the colors. So that's the plan. And this is Sao Paulo, the state of Sao Paulo. And as you see, different colors all over the place. and the governor is going to make a speech tomorrow. And I believe the city of Sao Paulo is going to move from orange, which it is right now. It's called Municipio de Sao Paulo. It's going to be moved from orange to yellow. So I think restaurants may open at some point. This is my last slide. And this slide is very interesting. It shows three very important things in the slide. This is from the governor of Sao Paulo, right? It's pure Sao Paulo. It's showing here, in my opinion, that there's going to be two waves of the epidemic. So there's a yellow mountain there, looks like Sugarloaf Mountain. Right? So of course we are there, Sugarloaf Mountain, big high, but there's going to be a second wave, and that's on the chart. The second interesting thing here, there's a dark orange line, and that's a hockey stick, and that's like swoosh, more hockey stick, and that's the recovery. So in GDP. So the Brazilian government, at least in Sao Paulo, they're not fooling themselves. They know it's going to be a long, slow recovery after what has happened. Okay, so it's not a V, it's a hockey stick or a Nike swoosh. And the third interesting thing about this slide is the length of time. It goes out to 3 years. They know it's not going to be a quick fix. So, which is not going to be, of course. But this slide was from the government of Sao Paulo. They have a big deck. And I thought it was a very interesting slide to show you of, this is the plan, at least for Sao Paulo, which is the economic driver of Brazil. It represents like around 35% of the GDP of the entire country. And to give you a number, the second state is Rio de Janeiro, is like 10% of the GDP in Brazil. So Sao Paulo really is as a financial and economic powerhouse of Brazil. So anyway, that's it. But I had my thoughts for today. And now Dr. Marcos said we would like to take on some questions. So here we are.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much for your nice presentation. Maybe for a second you could switch off the screen sharing.
You told me to do that, remember? Let's see. Stop sharing. Yes, we practiced.
Yeah, I think we if somebody has a specific question on a specific slide, then we can go back to screen sharing. I think it would be good before we start with questions, just to advise you that it's best if you use this feature in Zoom with a hand raising if you have a question. And if not, you can, of course, also switch on your microphone and start the question. But it would be good if you use this hand, which shows that you want to pose a question. So yeah, I would like to open the discussion. Is there the first question? Well, if not, then it's always hard to start a discussion. Then I would like to start maybe by, the usual question is always about how much COVID-19 really affects the country. We had a very nice discussion on Mexico last week. And the reality in South America is, I guess, that many people actually cannot adapt their social behavior. So, mainly social distancing because of economic reasons. Do you think that is even more severe in Brazil than in Mexico? Or do you think it's maybe all the same in South America?
Okay, I've lived in Mexico as well. So 2 years. Very, very, very extremely similar. Yes, I would say very, very similar. I don't see much of a difference, to be honest. And as I showed my slide with the pyramid there, showing how the wealth is distributed there, I think even in Mexico is even going to be much worse. As a number I like to give, let's say banking in Brazil. 67% of people have a bank in Brazil. In Mexico, it's 35%. Okay, so from that point of view, there are issues. Being poor in Mexico is quite a challenge as well. Yeah. So it's tough. It's tough, and it's as I said, with the mix between poverty and the lack of education, it's a recipe for exposing the very fragile social web that binds the country. So, you know, like in my building where I live, I think 90% of people have gone. They've gone to their country houses, the beach houses. They're gone, you know. I guess you read about that in Paris, right? Just people have gone. People have gone.
Yeah.
And of course, people have to pay the bills. So the metros, people are using the public transportation system. And, you know, the government did try a few things. They tried to say, okay, one day you drive the car, next day you can't drive the car, right? That lasted exactly 7 days, right? That stopped, right?
Yeah.
Then they had an idea that no bus can leave the terminal or bus stop if somebody's standing. You have to sit down. That lasted another week again, you know? So, you know, they're trying, huh? Don't get me wrong, huh? But it's tough, huh? It's tough. It really is tough, yeah.
Yeah, that was actually exactly my question. So, for example, last week we saw that in a display of each of the provinces, that provinces that had been very close to the president had the same kind of behavioral, let's say, same kind of behavior than the president itself. So he didn't like to distance. And I think, you know, from a European perspective at the moment, Brazil is one of the worst country with respect to behavioral, you know, straight policies, a little bit like in the US, because Bolsonaro obviously doesn't do much with respect to, you know, to encourage social distancing and also not wearing a face mask and things like that. So do you think this kind of perception, this European perception that Brazil is so bad in dealing with pandemic is justified?
Actually, no. There have been some surveys, and I was going to show that, but I had limited time. It shows the majority of the people, 80% are concerned. It's a company called Statistica, and 80% looks a real problem.
Okay.
But it showed numbers now, like something like only 30% thought the government was capable of doing something about it. And I think differ. The hospital bed example I use with the football stadiums. In Sao Paulo, there are like 3 or 4, I think, at least 3 maybe, football stadiums with the big tents and everything, and it's low occupancy. In Rio, I said they were planning to do a bunch, and they just partially did one in the famous stadium, the Maracanã. I'm not sure if it's even open 100% right now, but only one was even close to being completed. So it really depends where you are. Really depends on that. And I say in Brazil, like if you're really poor in Brazil, you know, you might have, you know, somebody in the family might be in prison. You might have no electricity. You have no water. You live in a kind of shanty town or something. You know, you have all these problems, big problems. You know, you cross the street, you know, 6-lane highway without any crossing or anything. You know, it's one more issue. Unfortunately, you know, it's a lot of suffering, and they look at it as one more suffering. Whereas the rich in Brazil, their houses, and that's it. Huh? The second houses.
I think David Alonso has a question, so please, I hand over.
Yeah, thank you for your talk. So there has been a debate about the influence of temperature and other environmental variables on COVID-19. And do you know any study working on that or in Brazil? Or what do you think about temperature? And many temperature are also solar radiation influencing on.
I just came off a 2-hour talk at my company with our chief medical officer, and that he addressed that question. Nobody knows anything, to be honest, because of course they said the virus has this kind of coat, and this coat doesn't do very well in doesn't do well in cold temperatures, but normal viruses, of course. In hot temperatures, the coat remains on, and that's not good, of course. But nobody knows, of course. And of course, they say it's mutated as well. No one knows. Sorry.
Okay, then I would like to hand over to Peter Friede.
Oh, thank you, Markus. Just one question, and sorry for coming up with Peru again, but that's another country where a lot of poverty is hampering the efforts. Now, the government was aware of that, and they've scaled up their cash transfer program. So trying really to put money in the pockets of people to prevent them from pursuing their informal business activities. But that has somehow backfired because they have an even lower rate of bank account ownership. So these people ended up queuing everywhere trying to get their government cash handouts. My question is, has Brazil done anything to help the people economically, those that need it, to help them stay away from informal activity or just prevent them from starving?
Yes, they have done that. They've given out 600 reales, which is like, that's 125 US dollars. They've done that. So you have to register for it and stuff like that. And sadly, of course, you see these big lines of going to the bank, of course, And there's a government savings plan that everybody contributes to, 8% of your salary. You normally get retirement, and they're allowing some access to that. But to be honest, Peter, that is nothing. That is the tip of the iceberg. It really doesn't get you very well. But they have done something, of course. I think to, of course, show social responsibility. But it's not even near enough to what's happening, what they need.
I don't see anybody raising their hand. I have a question about the data again, because we should also put that into perspective. Has anybody tried to somehow have an estimate about how many of cases have not been measured, the variability in the projection of R? So essentially, I would like to ask you whether you think the data in Brazil are actually qualitatively so bad, as you mentioned in one of your first slides, that it makes actually any sense to compute something like R and stuff like that? Or do you think the variation is not too bad so that you have at least a hint in the right direction?
Well, as I said, it's pretty bad. It's extremely bad, yes. And of course, it's very heterogeneous how you report in the country. That doesn't mean you should stop trying. Don't get me wrong. You have to try something, of course. But yeah, it's really poor, as I said, and it's really all over the place. And I think the best estimate is from this AIR I showed you, that they actually explicitly guessing. But it's all a guess, to be honest. And nobody really knows how many people have the disease, the factor of 10 and 12. People, they're saying that people who know don't say anything, and people who don't know talk a lot. Same thing here in Brazil. You really don't know a number. And you saw it like in Santa Clara, of course, when the good doctor, Dr. J, he said that, we're like 30 times over. He got completely killed as well for making this comment. Nobody knows. But of course, it's a number.
But may I just ask a short question? And that's, in Germany, they had some studies on a local level estimating very precisely how many undetected cases they had, just to get an estimate, how that could be for the total population. Is there anything in Brazil or any plans to do something like that you would know of?
No, I'm not aware of any plans. You hear stuff, but it really is not that credible. I really tried today to put my focus on things that are extremely credible. You hear stuff that this laboratory is going to do something and test these guys in Sao Paulo and stuff like that, but nothing really has concretely developed. In my opinion, Brazil, the focus was on flattening the curve to make sure that people are dying in the waiting rooms of the public hospitals. And I think, to be honest, mission accomplished. Okay. The virus is going to be with us for, whatever, 2 or 3, until we get a vaccine, whenever that is. And then in Brazil, even the vaccines tomorrow, is Brazil going to get it first? If you're poor in Brazil, when are you going to get it? It's all over the place. We're not going to be the first ones. And, if you're poor, you're going to be certainly at the back of the line. So it's a problem. Huh? It's a huge issue. So
okay. Let David and Peter have raised the hand again, I think. So maybe I start with David again.
Well, just I shared a link to a commentary last week where one of my colleagues at my institution was analyzing COVID-19 data and climate. and he
Okay.
so that the work is not yet published, and the work he cites of himself, but there might be something there also.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. That's very interesting. Yeah, we see it in the chat. Okay, then I would like to hand over to Peter again.
Thank you, Markus. Quick question about the definition of COVID-19 deaths. Has that evolved over time in Brazil? Are you happy with it? Does it compare to how other countries define it? You know, about testing the dead or asymptomatic? What counts as a COVID-19 death in Brazil?
I was going to include that, and I had some topics, and I did some research, and I wasn't 100% happy with my results. I saw in, is it 1996, I think? Like, technically, Brazil has adopted ICD-10, technically, but apparently on the birth certificate, it does not, right? And then the government has guidance on exactly that, and they're doing, you might have COVID-19. It's possible, probable, and these are categories in Brazil, and I've seen guidance on the death certificate. Probable and possible, okay? And as I made my reference to SARS, how come last year, in a 3-month period, there were 448 SARS cases, and the same period this year, there are 5,000 cases, right? So that's very suspicious, right? Obviously, somebody's putting numbers in SARS, and that's not the official. I can send you the link afterwards. That's the official link from the Brazilian government, showing that SARS has increased 10 times, which of course is not true. Of course, right? So that's suspicious as well. Regarding the classification, one thing good in Brazil, believe it or not, is that when there is a death, the process of getting a hospital, not a medical doctor signing off, that's very thorough, extremely thorough. Certainly more than in Trinidad, when I was born, of course. So from that point of view, the process of dying and getting a certificate is it's a little more rigid than a lot of countries which I've lived in from that point of view. But the misclassification is all over the place. I'll send you a link, Peter, and you'll see what the Brazilian government is saying with SARS, which is very interesting, actually. But this thing about the government is saying, to be honest, some university academics who have no reason to be political have said that they look at the data set and it has changed sometimes, and they're certainly apolitical. So very apolitical data scientists have said, well, we look at the data one day, it's one way. We look at the data next day, it's another data set. So, as I said, I don't produce models. I just see the output.
Okay, then I would like to give to Stefan.
Hi, I have a question about all is relative, where you're comparing deaths and infection rates for countries from the Johns Hopkins data. And for example, Brazil has much less death per millions as, for example, Belgium. Is it based on age structure, or do you have any clues about that?
That's a good, no, we don't have, I don't have any insights on that. That's a very, very good question. Why is it like that? To be honest, I can't really tell you, to be honest. Why is this little town in Rodonia that looks like, a retirement home like that? And then why is this one in the south so great? It's a mystery, to be honest. And Brazil is a big place, of course. It's a huge place. Certainly, if you look at Rio and Sao Paulo, you can see certainly, you can figure out why there may be differences there in Rio and Sao Paulo, especially how the governments are, the Sao Paulo government are already trying type of structuring, which is different maybe from many of the states. But from that point of view, let's say like the hospital capacity, sorry, I didn't have time. And if you contact me, I can actually give you another presentation of hospital expenditure. And then you will see the huge differences in Brazil about how the government spends on healthcare. And I would say how the government spends on healthcare is certainly a driving factor, if I had to make an educated guess.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands raising. Then just for completeness, because we covered last week Mexico, do you think there is a huge difference in the health systems in Mexico and Brazil, and how does it compare to all of South America?
Okay, to be honest, I didn't live in Mexico that long to do a deep dive into their health system. Brazil really tries to do what Obama always wanted, really healthcare for everybody. In my opinion, it's quite unique. Peter knows more about Peru, let's say, than I do in Latin America. But Brazil really has this thing that anybody can go and get anything from my point of view, maybe badly, but certainly they try to execute what Obama always wanted to do, to be honest, right? And they do sell it to the public.
Yeah.
From that point of view. As I said, no one's been dying in the waiting rooms. I showed the hospital capacity in Sao Paulo is 60%. It looks 60%, which doesn't look so bad whatsoever, right? So certainly from that point of view, I think that the curve, of course, is basically they flatten the curve, which is the best you can. I think I know Argentina. I lived there, and even Argentina people would, even in the office, they would go to a public hospital for stuff. So I think Argentina, in my opinion, is a different level, of course, of healthcare, of course, from a government, from a public point of view.
So for example, everybody living in a favela, let's say in Rio de Janeiro, could go to a hospital and get treatment?
Yes, not a private hospital, a public hospital.
Yeah. Okay.
Everybody can do it.
Yeah. So I guess this distinction between private sector and government health system is all over the place in South America.
I saw a statistic, which I didn't want to talk about because no fake news here, hopefully, that the case fatality rate in the public hospitals are 3 times private hospitals.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Side. Wasn't sure of the source, to be honest, but I saw that this week. It was 3 times, which kind of makes sense. As I said, it wasn't the best sites and the best source in the world.
Yeah.
There was going to be the Congress was going when things were really bad, and trust me, things are much better now than before. That they would say that even the private hospitals could be taken by the public. Okay, and the senator, and he was going to say a single line. So if I needed intensive care, right? You have to go in line. You have the best private care in the world or not, and the bill wasn't passed, and there was no stress to the health system, thankfully. But that actually there was rhetoric about the public taking over the private hospitals. Now, what the private hospitals did, and they're not so crazy. For instance, the nice field camp I showed you in Sao Paulo, that was executed by the best private hospital in Brazil called Einstein. The Einstein Hospital. They did that. So you see that the private hospitals have taken the initiative to try to help organize things. So you see they certainly haven't just washed their hands and said, oh no, put their big gates up and say, no, where's your private health plan? They have gone out and tried to do something for the social good. Nice, of course.
So the private hospitals are better funded and they can take the initiatives the government hospitals couldn't really do, I guess.
Yeah, but it was a nice gesture, and certainly apparently because they're going to close the field hospital now because it's down to 12% occupancy now. So.
Okay, are there any other questions? Then just use your microphone if somebody has a question. Okay, that seems not to be the case. Then, yeah, I would like to thank Ronald again for this wonderful talk and overview over Brazil. Yeah, maybe we should clap our hands. Yes, and I would like to wish everybody a good evening or morning, wherever you are in the world. And yeah, see you hopefully next week. So don't remember, we have a talk here on the same URL, on the same Zoom link every week. So I hope you are interested in our future talks. And if you want to see the talk today again, you can go to our YouTube channel. So there will be a recorded version of this again. So you can watch freely. Okay, so I wish everybody a good day and goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Bye, guys. See ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.